Citizens United is simply the latest round of the age-old struggle between the citizens and government. People want to participate in the government, and they certainly want to be able to criticize them when it's warranted. The government, particularly incumbent politicians, want to use government to silence them. Now, when we had the divine right of kings, if you criticized the government, you were tortured, imprisoned, murdered, and then condemned to hell. When we separated church and state, you were just tortured, imprisoned, and murdered. Now, that is until the founding of our country, because the American exceptionalism includes the profound fact that our government is organized as the citizens' self-government. And in order to provide for that self-government, the First Amendment protects the four indispensable democratic freedoms of speech, press, assembly, and petitioning your government. This First Amendment was the world's most radical campaign finance reform, and it contemplated no law. That is, the citizens, it placed the law firmly behind the citizens' right to participate in the government without the need of consulting the law to determine if you could do it, and without the fear that the government would punish you for having done so. Now, incumbent politicians, as they are apt, were still, after the founding of our country, quick to use the government to silence critics. In fact, in the 1790s, the Federalist Party passed the Alien and Sedition Act because of their fear of the insurgent Republican Party led by Thomas Jefferson, which provide for criminal penalties if you would hold the government in disrepute through your statements or communications. Well, in 1800, this effort was unsuccessful. As the Republicans swept the election, the Federalist Party dissolved, the Alien and Sedition Act was repealed, and those that were convicted of criminal offenses under it were pardoned by President Thomas Jefferson. We still saw later on another Sedition Act passed in 1918 in response to the communist menace, and it did not last long on the books either. That takes us to the modern period, if you will. In 1905, the Tillman Act was passed, which prohibited corporate contributions to candidates. Now, Congressman Tillman was a notorious segregationist, and he was concerned that Republican-leading corporations were supporting his opponent and that he might lose, so as incumbent politicians are apt, he sought to use the government to protect his re-election chances by prohibiting this opposition to him, and he was successful in the passage of that act. In the late 1940s, that act, the Tillman Act, was extended to unions and was also extended to prohibit corporation and labor union expenditures, in addition to contributions which had been prohibited since 1905. And then in 1974, the post-Watergate amendments were passed, and these amendments imposed contribution limits, expenditure limits, and prohibitions on any communications that were for the purpose of influencing an election. And, of course, the corporate prohibition, labor union prohibition, that originated in the Tillman Act prohibited expenditures, quote, in connection with a federal election. And, of course, all of these are quite broad, involve literally anything you might say about the government or politicians or governmental policies. And it was a full panoply of restrictions and prohibitions that were imposed. Then in 1987, the Supreme Court in Austin versus Michigan Chamber of Commerce for the first time addressed the constitutionality of the corporate prohibition on expenditures and upheld them finding a brand new governmental interest in protecting our electoral system from corporate corruption. And here what they had in mind was not quid pro quo corruption, but that because corporations raise their money in the economic marketplace and then spend it in the political marketplace, their view was this participation, the spending of money in the political marketplace, would corrupt the political marketplace. You know, since no one has a money tree other than the federal government, and nearly everyone gets their money from the economic marketplace, you wonder how far this interest could have ultimately gone if Citizens United had not intervened.